You must let go of the self, they said. But what if that's not freedom, but erasure? You've heard it before. There is no self. Ego is the enemy. Let go of who you think you are. But let me ask you something. If there's no self, who's meditating? Who's suffering? Who's waking up? I'm Silent Flame. And today we begin a journey into the most misunderstood teaching in all of Buddhism, anatta, not self. Because there's a difference between realizing you are not fixed and believing you must disappear. And that difference might be the line between awakening and spiritual self harm, what anatta really means and what it doesn't. Let's be clear the Buddha never said, "You do not exist." He said, "That which you call I is impermanent, empty of ownership, and causes suffering when clung to." That's not nihilism, that's clarity. What is anatta? Not a denial of experience, not a rejection of awareness, not a void where nothing matters. It's the insight that your thoughts don't belong to you. Your personality isn't solid. Your identity is not a prison unless you mistake it for truth. So who are you? A moment, a process, a dance of causes and conditions unfolding moment by moment, the danger of misunderstanding anatta. Many Western practitioners take no self to mean I must kill my personality. I should feel nothing. All individuality is ego. This isn't liberation. This is spiritual violence. If you try to erase yourself, who's doing the erasing and why? Often it's the same mind that hated itself before ever hearing the Dharma, now dressed in robes, calling its pain non-attachment. Anatta is not repression. It's not saying don't feel, don't think, don't exist. It's saying feel and see through it. Think and don't cling to the thinker. Exist and know that you're not a thing, but a happening. Then what is you in Buddhism? If there's no self, what continues? Not a soul, not a solid entity, but a pattern, a process, a flame passed from wick to wick. The Buddha compared it to a chariot composed of parts, but not a single essence, a river, always flowing, never the same, a flame dependent on fuel, never truly graspable. So who are you? You are the way the world feels itself, here and now, the habit of craving, compassion, memory, choice, a bundle of aggregates, but also the space that sees the bundle, and that space is not nothing, it's clarity, it's wakefulness, not a person, but not unconscious. Cliffhanger, what if the self is not false, but temporary? Let me offer a new question. What if the self isn't a lie, but a language? What if personality is not an illusion, but an interface? What if letting go of I doesn't mean disappearing, but appearing more fully without clinging? Maybe the problem isn't having a self. Maybe the problem is mistaking the self for truth. And maybe, just maybe, Buddhism isn't asking you to erase yourself, but to stop mistaking yourself for something that needs to be erased. Theravada, dissolving the false, not the whole. Let's start with the classical foundation, Theravada. Here, self is not something to hate, it's something to understand. The five aggregates, panchakanda, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. The Buddha taught, these are not yours, not who you are, not to be clung to. But he didn't say, you are nothing. He said, see clearly, and the illusion of mine will fall away. The arahant doesn't become blank, they become free. Mahayana, the empty self, and the compassionate mask, Mahayana, goes deeper. It says, not only is the self empty, but everything is. Not just no me, no thing, no chair, no thought, no boundary. Shunyata, emptiness. But here's the paradox. The bodhisattva keeps a self to serve. I vow to save all beings, even though no beings truly exist. This isn't contradiction, it's compassion. Skillful means, upaya in Mahayana. The self is a mask, but a useful one, a vehicle for compassion. The bodhisattva doesn't erase personality. They offer it consciously, like an actor who knows the role is not real, but plays it anyway for the liberation of the audience. Zen, the vanishing self in action. Zen doesn't argue, it chops wood, carries water, and says, who are you when you're not trying to be anyone? Just sit, just act, just be. In Soto Zen, the practice is shikantaza, just sitting, no trying, no becoming, no self-image. And in that, the self drops away, not because it was destroyed, but because it was never there to begin with. Koans, riddles for the ego. What was your original face before your parents were born? That's not poetry. That's dynamite. It explodes identity, not to leave you empty, but to leave you free. Vajrayana, the self as a tool of transformation. Now we enter the tantric path. Vajrayana. Here, the self is not just a delusion, it's a tool. Deity yoga. The practitioner visualizes themselves as a deity, radiant, divine, fierce, or peaceful, not to become proud, but to see through identity completely. I am not this body. I am not this gender. I am not even this mind. I am Vajrayogin. I am empty form. The mask burns itself. The deity is not ego, it's mirror. You take on the form to transcend form. You play the self so fully that it dissolves. Ego doesn't survive that, but awareness does. Cliffhanger. What if the self is art? So now we ask, if Theravada dissolves the self, and Mahayana uses it to serve, and Zen ignores it into oblivion, and Vajrayana transforms it into deity, then maybe the self is not the problem. Maybe it's a medium, a brushstroke, a dance, a mask made of wind. Maybe awakening isn't about destroying identity. It's about not clinging to any version of it. What happens to personality after awakening? Many people imagine that enlightenment means no preferences, no quirks, no history, no personality. But look at the stories. The Buddha had presence. He argued, corrected, laughed, refused. He loved solitude, but also led thousands. Mahakassapa was stern, Ananda was soft, Sariputta was analytical, Moggallana had visions. They didn't merge into a bland oneness. They became clear versions of themselves, uncluttered by craving, not no one, but no longer bound by the roles they once clung to. Enlightened personalities, fierce, soft, unique Milarepa, wild devotion, former black magician, turned renunciate, spent years in caves, sang spontaneous songs of realization. Milarepa didn't disappear. He transformed. His intensity remained, but it no longer poisoned. The fire was still there, but it warmed. It didn't burn. Dogen, poet of precision, Japanese Zen master, wrote dense poetic texts, lived in strict discipline. He didn't lose himself. He sharpened it into an instrument of Dharma. Tenzin Palmo, direct and kind, spent 12 years in Himalayan solitude, speaks with piercing clarity, empathetic but unsentimental. She isn't selfless in the Western sense. She is fully herself and transparent. When the self becomes a vessel, after awakening, the I doesn't vanish. It becomes optional, like a glass that holds water but doesn't pretend to be the water. You speak, you act, you feel, but the clinging is gone. You don't perform a role. You wear it like a robe, useful, temporary, not mistaken for skin. The true self, in Dzogchen and Zen, they say, the true self is no self, but also the true person of no rank walks through the gate. So who is that? It's you, when you stop trying to be anyone. Cliffhanger, can the self survive awakening? So now we ask, if the self is a dream, can a dream still be beautiful once you know it's a dream? If personality is constructed, can it still sing once it's no longer trying to impress? What if awakening doesn't destroy the self, but burns away the false and leaves behind a shape made of freedom? Your brain needs a self, or does it? Let's talk science. Neuroscience tells us the self is a construct. There's no single self center in the brain. Our sense of I is built from memory, sensation, emotion, language. In other words, you are a story your brain tells itself, a useful story, but still a story. The default mode network, DMN. When your brain is at rest, the DMN lights up. It creates mental simulations, past, future, identity, social roles. It's the voice in your head. Meditation quietens it, not because it's evil, but because silence is where truth begins. Trauma and the fractured self. Now let's get deeper. Sometimes the self doesn't need to be let go. It needs to be healed. Trauma fragments identity, childhood neglect, abuse, war rejection. These don't make you enlightened. They make your I feel unsafe, unstable, broken. And then Buddhism comes along saying, let go of the self. But if you never had a stable one to begin with, how do you let it go? Healing must come before dissolving meditation helps. Yes, but it must be held with care. You cannot transcend what you're still running from. You cannot awaken through dissociation. Real practice includes holding the fragments, breathing into the pain, naming the self before releasing it. The culture of self construction. Culture builds you before you do. From birth, you're told your name, your gender, your role, what's good and what's shameful. By age 7, your nervous system is trained to react to a script you didn't write. This isn't ego, it's inheritance. So when Buddhism says, see through the self, it also means see through conditioning, see through roles, see through shame, because most of your personality is not personal, it's survival. Cliffhanger, the self as software, not hardware. So now let's ask, if your self is not hardwired, but coded by experience, then what happens when you rewrite the code? What if meditation isn't deleting the self, but deprogramming it? And what if the emptiness you discover isn't the absence of self, but the space where new truth can rise? What happens when I becomes optional? You've meditated for years, you've studied the teachings, you begin to notice the voice in your head isn't always yours. The pain you carry isn't permanent. The you who reacts can be witnessed. A shift happens. You still think, still feel, still choose, but the grip loosens. You no longer believe every thought. You no longer defend the story. You start to move more freely, not absence, presence. The self isn't gone, but it becomes transparent, like a window, not a wall. How relationships change without a fixed self. You're in conflict. Someone criticizes you. You feel the burn. But now, instead of reacting, you watch. Who is hurt? What part of me needs to be right? Where does this land in the body? You still speak. You still set boundaries, but not from identity, from clarity. Non-self is not passivity. It's non-reaction. It's non-attachment to being right. It's freedom to respond, not just replay. This changes everything: parenting, friendship, conflict, intimacy. You meet people as they are, not as reflections of who you need to be. How embodiment transforms when you is not in the way. The body becomes a different place. Sensations arise, breath deepens, pain comes and goes, and the story, my back hurts, becomes there is sensation here. This is not detachment. This is direct contact. When there's no you fighting the moment softens. Even grief becomes space. Even rage becomes energy, not identity. You become less tense, more present, not above it all, but inside it, cleanly. Cliffhanger. What if you've never actually met yourself? So now let me ask, what if everything you thought was you was just habit, echo, conditioning, reaction? And what if behind that, there's a field of awareness you've never really touched because you were busy being someone? What if real freedom isn't about discovering who you are, but about realizing you don't need to be anyone to love, to live, to see clearly? When no self becomes a spiritual identity, let's be honest, some of the people who talk most about no self have the biggest spiritual egos. You've seen it. The teacher who claims no identity but demands reverence. The practitioner who says there is no me but corrects others constantly. The student who hides behind silence to avoid vulnerability. Ego can wear robes too, and it loves the mask of non-self, because if there's no I, then it doesn't have to say, I'm afraid, I want attention, I need love. Instead, it says, I am empty, and hides. The risk of dissociating from humanity. There's a danger here. When no self is misunderstood, it can become emotional detachment, avoidance of responsibility, a way to feel above others. That's not wisdom, that's disconnection. Real non-self is not, I don't care. It's, I no longer need to be the center. It's not, I don't feel. It's, I feel everything, but don't call it mine. The irony, the more clearly the self dissolves, the more intimate life becomes. You don't float away, you melt into reality. The mirror teacher. There's a Zen story. A student asks, Master, do you have a self? The master replies, when I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm tired, I sleep. When someone weeps, I hold them. When the wind moves, I move with it. When the fire burns, I offer warmth. No talk of emptiness, no doctrine, just presence. True no self doesn't explain itself. It acts clearly, lovingly, without center. And because it doesn't cling to identity, it can wear any for the sake of others. Cliffhanger, if no one is left, who loves? So now we ask, if the self is gone, who chooses kindness? If there's no I, what gives rise to compassion? And the answer is the most intimate one. Love doesn't come from a self. It comes through this emptiness, just like a flute is empty, but music flows through it. You become the space where life happens clearly and everything is allowed to be. Life after the self, what actually changes? You wake up, you brush your teeth, you make tea, but something is gone. No one is narrating your day. No one is performing your identity. No one is trying to be spiritual. There's action, but no actor. There's thought, but no thinker. There's love, but no lover. And still, you smile, you breathe, you move. This is not emptiness as absence. This is emptiness as intimacy, not enlightened, just fully available. You stop calling it awakening. You just sit with a friend. You stop calling it non-self. You just say what's true. You stop needing to be wise, calm, compassionate. You are those things when needed because there's nothing blocking them anymore. When the I is gone, what remains is presence, response, clarity, kindness without motive. You don't become perfect. You become real. The people who don't claim anything but live it, you won't find them on stage. You won't see awakened master in their bio, but you'll know them when you meet them. The woman who listens more than she speaks. The teacher who says, I don't know, more often than I do. The man who holds silence and you feel safe in it. They don't quote sutras, they are the sutra in motion, and they don't hide behind emptiness. They walk through fire and offer water, because when you no longer need to be anything, you're free to be what's needed. Is anything left? Yes. What's left is the breath still happening, the wind still moving, the hand still reaching for another, the tears still real, but none of it belongs to anyone, and that's why it's finally free. I was never the doer, it was the excuse. Now action happens without friction, and love flows without ownership. This is not transcendence, this is embodied absence. Cliffhanger, if you are gone, but love remains, what is that? So let's ask again. If you are gone, but awareness still sees, and love still moves, and kindness still answers, then what exactly is left? Not a person, not a soul, not a point, just Dharma in form, just truth, walking, just life without self. You were never the self, but you were never not here. Let's start with the simplest truth. You were never your name, never your roles, never your pain, your victories, your story, but you were also never not real. There was breath, there was awareness, there was life moving through form. The self was like clothing, useful, warm, but never who you were. The illusion that binds us and the freedom that doesn't need a name. I want to awaken. Who is that I? I let go of ego. Who said that? I feel free. Who's feeling? The trap isn't the feeling of self. It's the believing that it's solid, personal, permanent. Once you stop insisting, reality becomes gentle. It doesn't erase you. It includes you. Lightly, it moves, and you move with it. The person you were trying to become is already gone. You tried to be spiritual, worthy, free. And then, one day, there was no one left to try. Just this breath, this sound, this pain, this love, this silence. Not yours, not someone else's. Just here. There is no you, but you're here. Always were. Final word, silent flame. I'm not here to tell you you don't exist. That's a trick of language. I'm here to say you were never the problem. You were just taken too seriously. And when the you softens, when it stops defending, achieving, performing, what remains is clarity, stillness, availability, compassion, effortless and centerless. You don't vanish, you just stop pretending. No self is not a void. It's a mirror so clean you can finally see the world without blocking it. And now, walk now. Close this video. Walk outside. Feel the wind. Notice how you're not thinking about being someone. And yet life is still happening perfectly. You're not gone, but you're not in the way. And that might be enough.